Well, Buddy Rushing joins me today, and you can find him on all the socials by going to Buddy Rushing or do a quick search, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Buddy Rushing for those networks. Thanks for your time here, Buddy. We're going to be talking about quite a few things, and I'm going to start things off by having you introduce yourself a little bit and giving us an idea of how you got into real estate. But let's do the truncated version of that because I'm sure you've shared that story a million times
Yeah.
over by now.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate the you know willingness to have me truncated because you're it's so funny whenever people say, tell me about your journey." And I'm like, "Well, I'm 42." So like that's 42 years of life. Like it's never going to be a short answer, right? And
Right.
so, you know, so the short version is, I grew up, really poor in East Tennessee and never knew anything about money or finances or anything like that. But then I was able to join the Marine Corps back in 2005 and or 2004, and went to Afghanistan several times and had that whole experience. And while I was there, interestingly enough, I read the book that millions and millions of other people have read, which Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that kind of got me interested in not only real estate but the kind of unlocked in my mind a belief that I could, not just that someone could build wealth in real estate or build financial freedom, but that I could. Even though I didn't have any kind of background in it, I didn't have the right family name or any kind of money. It was really powerful. It was a really powerful moment for me. And then I got into real estate, and boy, I've spoken about it on lots of other podcasts, but I made a lot of mistakes. I have had horrific losses in real estate, but I've had more wins than losses, and I think that's something I take with me. And it was the same thing in my professional career. Like I went to the United States Naval Academy for college, and then I was a Marine, and then got into real estate, and now I build businesses in real estate. And in all three of those endeavors, I got punched in the face over and over again, and the only way that I ever won was like Rocky Balboa, just continue moving forward, regardless of how many times you get punched in the face, and have more wins than losses. And so it's ugly and messy, but it really is a beautiful way to live whenever you have that sort of mission mindset and tenacity.
Sure. Well, I'd love to get into some of those lessons learned along the way. You've said some horrific losses. What type of
Yeah,
experiences? What were some of the more painful experiences you went through?
my first one, my first investment ever, back whenever I didn't have any real money. I had deployed to Afghanistan for 9 months, and whenever you are in a war zone, oftentimes one of the inadvertent things that happens is you save a lot of money because you're not spending any money. You're getting tax-free dollars and you're getting hazard pay because you're in a dangerous area, and so all that builds up. And so I came back from Afghanistan with $30,000 in the bank, which was the most money I'd ever even heard of, basically. Right? I knew
Mhm.
no one who had 30 grand. I was the richest person in the history of the world in my mind. And I had just read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I was ready to give it a go. And so I came back and I bought a house. My first house I ever bought. I bought it with the idea, let me buy a really old house and renovate it with my own money, and then I'll sell it, I'll flip it and make a lot of money because I'd seen the flip
Mhm.
or flop shows and stuff. And so I did. I bought a house, but I bought a house, Jack, in June of 2007 with the intent
Uh-oh.
to renovate it over the course of the next year and then flip it and sell it. And so, of course, over the next year, the market dropped 40% and no one was buying and people were jumping off of buildings. And, it was like this massive disaster. Of course, I had
Mhm.
no idea as I pumped every remaining dollar I had into that deal. And I bought it for 152,000 in June 2007. I put all of my $30,000 into it, and plus every night, weekend for a year and a half. And when it was finally finished, it was a beautiful house. We really did a great job renovating it, and it was a beautiful house at the end. But bought it for 152, put 30 grand into it, plus 18 months of my life, and I got it appraised afterwards, and it appraised at $68,000.
Ouch.
Yes. So it had lost half its value, over half its value, And and that was my first foray into real estate. So welcome to real estate.
So what did you do there? Did you sell it or did you hold it as a rental at that
No,
point?
I
What did
couldn't.
you decide to do?
Yeah, couldn't sell it. Lived in it at the time, and so I was stationed at 29 Palms, and I had another. We finished renovation on the last day that I was set to stay at that duty station before I was going to get moved to the East Coast. And so I remember cleaning it and like the at the down to the last minute, and then we stayed at a hotel that night and then left, and then we rented it out. So we couldn't sell it because we were underwater on it, and so we
Hmm.
rented it out. And here's something that's interesting that people that are listening might want to take home is that was a horrible decision. I should never have bought. It was a terrible time to try to flip. If I had known anything at all, I wouldn't have done it. However, even though I made that horrific mistake and it was all my fault, I still own that house, right? So that was 2007, and now it's 17 years later. And that horrific house is now worth almost $300,000. It's rented for like $1,700 a month. My mortgage is $600 a month. And so it cash flows about $1,000 a month. And it's got 150, $200,000 worth of equity. So it now is a great asset, right? So
Hmm.
what is that? What lesson do I take from that? The power of time with rental real estate is an awesome power because rent tends to go up over time. Housing values tend to go up over time. The amount you owe on the house tends to go down over time because you're paying it off, and you get tax benefits. So the longer you hold something like that, potentially the more powerful it's going to be. And so that was a lesson that I learned. And so that horrific first decision, actually over time truly did heal all the wounds of that bad choice. So I thought that was super interesting about real estate and its ability to help you build generational wealth.
Well, I think what's even more telling is that you didn't overreact and you didn't sell out of panic. A lot of
Yeah.
people would do that.
A lot of people did do that, right? And instead of selling, what a lot of people did was just let it go back to the bank, right? That was a big. You remember that time, right? A lot of people
Hmm.
were basically just doing strategic foreclosures and just saying like, it's going to take a hit to my credit, or they were doing short sales, right? Short sales were a big thing back then, right? Which is where you sell the house for less than it's worth, but it doesn't hit your credit as hard as a foreclosure does, right?
Hmm.
And I thought about short selling briefly, but to me, what we decided, and this was because we had somebody that was in our life that was a really smart guy, and he said, "Listen, think about this for a second, right? I know, like, because it felt like a gut punch, Jack. Like whenever we got, the $69,000 appraisal back, I was like, whoa, where's the one in front of that? I was like, this should, I was hoping it appraised for like 200 grand, right?
Hmm.
Because that's what I was thinking." And it was like, and they were like, nah, it's, I mean, the whole thing. So the real estate agent friend of mine was like, listen, though, there's opportunity here because this whole town's half off. The whole town's lost 50% of its value, but because it's a military town and now it's 2009 and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are raging and they're plussing up troop strength and pouring money into the DoD. Well, BAH has gone up, which is the allowance for housing. And so when the allowance for housing goes up, the amount you can pay as a military person in rent goes up. And in a military town, that means that what? Every house is half off, but the rent has gone up over the last 2 years. So
Hmm.
the delta between the mortgage you have to pay on these houses and the rent you can get just went. And so he said, listen, think strategically, man. Don't freak out and panic. You need to be buying everything you can buy and holding it. Just buy and hold. You didn't need any sophisticated strategy at all because everybody was scared of real estate. And so you could pick houses up on Zillow for with no, I mean, there were houses sitting on Zillow for like 3 months, like $70,000 houses that could rent for $900 a month and were in great condition and sitting on the market for like months because everybody was scared of real estate. So he was
Hmm.
like, you need to think long term and you need to buy your way out of this bad situation. So my wife, or who was my girlfriend at the time, she and I together had scraped up $16,000 that we were going to spend on our wedding. Right, we were going to pay for our wedding ourselves, and I give her all the credit in the world. One day we were driving down the road, and and she was like, we had just talked to this guy Larry who had said that about the town being half off and opportunity, and she said, you know what, we should just get married at the courthouse and use this $16,000 to buy another property. And we did. We got married at the San Bernardino County Courthouse, which is not a nice location, and we used that money to buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that was brand new, less than a year old. The developer had went bankrupt and he got foreclosed on, and so we bought it out of foreclosure, and yeah, we bought it for $69,000 and rented it out for $975. Yeah, that house ended up making us a whole bunch of money. So yeah, seeing the opportunity, I think in the disaster was something that I'm really thankful that Larry was there to give us that guidance.
You've mentioned that you were in the Marines. I'd be curious, what lessons from the Marines did you bring to real estate investing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was a combat engineer in the Marine Corps, and so a combat engineer, I was a division combat engineer, which means that my job was primarily to break things and blow things up, to move things out of the way, and then to build things. And so, but a combat engineer specifically is not like a structural engineer or anything like that. The things that we build are meant to be rugged, they're meant to work, but they're not pretty, and they're not meant to last that long. Right? They're meant to withstand blast and things like that. Whenever I blow something up, it's not a surgical procedure. It's you put a whole bunch of explosive there, you get the heck out of the way and you blow it up, right? So my point in saying all of that is that my approach to success in business is the same as my approach that got me success in the Marine Corps, and that is it's not going to be pretty, but I will never be stopped in executing toward and accomplishing my mission by failure. I will not be stopped by adversity. I will not be stopped by bad luck. I will not be stopped by anything except death. And if I do my job right and I inspire enough people, even death won't stop the mission from moving forward because other people will take up the mantle, which is what white feathers become. White feather won't die when I die, right? There are too many people now that it's their own. It's become their own. It's not mine anymore. It's their mission to build financial freedom for their families so they can live the American dream of freedom they fought to protect. That's what that dream is now. So what I bring a sense of, it's not even skill, I suppose. It's definitely not intelligence or anything like that. It's maybe it's just that rugged determination that no matter what, the mission's important enough to succeed, to keep trying until you succeed. Tenacity, maybe tenacity is a word to use. I don't know.
I this is something that's kind of one of the many quotes from the show, but that persistent, consistent behavior, being tenacious, and is going to definitely outmaneuver any intellect in the real estate world.
I agree with that.
Just can't stop. You just have to keep moving forward.
I agree with that completely. I have a very, very smart friend of mine who's like Mensa level genius, right? And every time I talk to him about running numbers on real estate or whatever, he creates these like presentations and these like his Excel skills are just unbelievable, and he creates these massively complex algorithms and all this stuff to calculate the numbers and run it. But he hasn't really moved that far toward financial freedom. He kind of is still working a job. He's still doing this, even though he knows all this stuff. And it's almost like his amazing amount of intelligence kind of gets him into analysis paralysis, maybe, right? Because he's thinking so deeply about things instead of just acting. And, I mean, yeah, we live in a world that has been crafted by deep thinkers. And so I'm very thankful for all of the truly intelligent, wonderful thinkers there are in the world. But in real estate, to your point, you don't need to be that smart. You just need to learn some basic stuff and execute on them over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's just one of those things too that, you mentioned getting into flipping houses, watching HGTV or something. I think a lot of people do that. They get burned on that first one. They think they can do that too, but unfortunately they can't do it in 30 minutes. That the first one you did took 18 months. So it's having to have going into this with eyes wide open.
That's a big, big point of it. I'm a big fan of, like, I look back at the things that have happened, and I try not to regret anything that I do, and instead I try to take the lesson from it, and because I can't change it, I can't change a mistake, but what I can do is I can potentially take a lesson from it instead of just feeling bad about it, right? But what I will tell you is if I know what I know now, I never would have bought that Sun Valley house. Like, there's no way. Like, I bought it for 152,000, and I could only rent it for 900 when all was said and done after renovation. That's not even close to the 1% rule. So, and also, I would have looked around and been like, hey, the whole world is falling. Why don't I wait a year and see when the bottom hits, and then I'll
Mhm.
start buying, right? And if I had done that, then yeah, sure, I would have hit my financial freedom number, probably at least 5 years sooner than I did, right? And it would have saved me time. So if I'd known what I know, so to your point, I highly recommend that people get the knowledge. It's everywhere. Everywhere. You can invest in a coach or a mentor, which is awesome. You can buy a training program, which is awesome. You can go on Bigger Pockets and read their free blogs, which is awesome. You can go on YouTube and YouTube University, right? And like
Mhm.
fill your brain full of knowledge. The knowledge is out there. You can pay for it and get it distilled, or you can do your own research and get it for free. Takes a little longer that way, but it's free, right? So not even not having money is an excuse. The knowledge is out there and it's available, and I would highly recommend that you start there with the knowledge. But if you don't combine that with action, then nothing will ever change. And that's the most common story you see is people who educate, 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 and then they just don't ever do anything. You know.
Yeah, it's kind of all over the board. One of some of those things you mentioned, analysis paralysis. You see the other side of the coin too, of people who get all revved up and excited. They read Rich Dad Poor Dad. They think they're going to do it. They just jump right in without taking a breath, making sure it's the right time, and you
Mhm.
actually are armed with a few things first.
That's
Just
what
to
I did,
remind
and it hurts.
everybody, find Buddy and all the socials, Buddy Rushing, and I'm going to try to have as many of those links as clickable in the show notes. If you found some value in what we're talking about so far, do us a quick favor and share this episode with one of your real estate investing friends. And if you are watching us on YouTube, give us a quick like and subscribe to the channel. Buddy, you've mentioned White Feather, the White Feather community a couple of times here right now. It's kind of unique. I have a lot of people that come on this show with various communities, some paid for, some not, a
Mhm.
variety of things. But yours is unique in quite a bit aspect in the fact that you're on a mission to help veterans and military families. Can you talk a little bit about that? I think it's very abnormal regarding that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the ultimate mission that drives everything that I do, in business. And the mission is to help our members build financial freedom. But there's a reason behind that, right? So so it's when I took a look around at all of the people that had served with me in the Marine Corps and all the people that, you know, that basically volunteer to serve and to sacrifice their time, their family, their freedom, their lives for this country. There's a common thread there, right? There's millions and millions and millions of Americans who decide, you know what, I want to put on a uniform and face the prospect of people shooting at me, or face the prospect of, going into a burning building, or something like that, like working nights and weekends and really serving and sacrificing. And they do it for the common goal of, you know, keeping this American dream alive, keeping the freedom that we have in this country alive, right? And some of them do it by force, and some of them do it by just service, like firefighters and first responders and so on. And so the common thread is you've got these millions and millions of people who have volunteered to do this amazingly honorable thing to keep this, what I think is the greatest country in history, alive. But they do that by and large to keep that dream of freedom alive. And then how many of them actually get a chance to live it themselves, right? Because I'm sorry, working, 16 hours a day at a job that you may or may not even like, just to be able to afford to pay rent, is not living a life of freedom, right? It's not. And so many, when I say police officer, firefighter, military, veteran, you don't think independently wealthy, you don't think financially free, and they're the people who are ultimately making this dream of freedom a reality. And so for me, it was like, man, that has got to change. And not only that, what if we do have success? What if we are able to help millions and millions of these types of people build financial freedom in their lives, and they can do whatever they want with their day? What do you think they're going to do with their time? they're going to continue to serve. They already volunteered. They already showed that that's what they wanted to do with their life, is help out their fellow American. And so they're going to continue to serve, but in a greater capacity. So imagine if we have a generation or multiple generations of these people who we help them build financial freedom using real estate, which is a vehicle that any normal person can use to build generational wealth, as we know, as you know already. And then I think what they're going to do is they're going to turn around and help other people, and that has come true. So in the White Feather community, we're still relatively small. There's about 600 of us, but we have worked directly with each other, and I know every one of them. Every member of White Feather has a number in my phone, and we vet everybody that comes into the community. And our mission is not complete until they're financially free. And so for some people, that's $10,000 a month of passive income. For others, it's 20,000. For others, it's more modest than that. But it's happening. Like we've helped 40 something people become millionaires. We've collectively as a group over the past 6 years purchased $1.3 billion of residential real estate across the United States. And I mean, there's an outsized amount of impact that they're able to have because we're like a family, and the speed of trust inside this community is lightning fast, right? Mostly because the people that are admitted in are in general people of integrity, but also because there's a very high accountability rating inside here. If you screw somebody over in this community and you don't fix it, you're done. You're gone without, remorse, right? And it has to be that way. It has to be like a wolf pack where, the honor and integrity and action are values that we all espouse. So anyway, point is that mission is a mission that I love and care for very deeply. And the theory that I had of help a veteran become financially free and they'll continue to serve, it's working, and it feels amazing to see those kinds of things. So anyway, that's the community. That's the like I said, we're still pretty small right now in the scheme of things because I wanted to start it. I wanted to prove that it could work first, right? And
Mm-hmm.
instead of just like helping people buy a house or helping them use their VA loan or teaching them a few strategies and then putting them in a Facebook group, I wanted instead to create success stories, right? And that takes a lot of work. So now we have hundreds of success stories, and we're in the process now of scaling and growing the community because I mean, I know for a fact there's no way that we can make generational national impact if I'm getting on a call with every single person. It's not scalable. So we've partnered with people now, and we're building out portions of the community to reach. I mean, the goal is eventually there's 16.5 million veterans in America, not to mention another, several, but maybe another 20 million police officers, firefighters, first responders. So it's a big mission.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned vetting people out a bit before they're allowed in the community. Can you talk about a little bit about what type of qualifications somebody would need to have?
Yeah. So the primary thing that we're looking for is that people will have an abundance kind of mindset, meaning, unfortunately in the real estate world, there are unfortunately a lot of people who see it as a pie that has only so many slices, and if you get two slices, then those are two that I don't get, right? And there are
Mm-hmm.
plenty of people that compete and cutthroat and do each other dirty or lie to each other or steal from each other, and we didn't want any of that stuff to happen because that's actually not true. It's not true that there's scarce resources. There is an abundance, an overwhelming abundance of opportunity, of wealth, of money, of resources, everything. There's so much available that you can have everything you need and I can have everything that I want at the same time. And so we look for somebody that is willing to help other people and to pay it forward, right, with their knowledge. And then high integrity is a must, right? Just do what you say you're going to do and don't lie to people, don't hurt people. And then the biggest one, those are givens, right? Those have to be in place. But a lot of people fit that criteria. A lot of people are good people. A lot of people have high integrity, right? That's it's a good thing. But then we also look for people. You have to have a bias for action. You cannot just come into this community and learn everything and not do anything, because otherwise your life's never going to change. So we do look for people that have a bias for action. And then for us, really the criteria of for our community is you've served in the military, you've served as a police officer, a firefighter, or a first responder at some point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's That's what makes up our community.
Sure. Let's say you have somebody like that listening right now. Before they even consider getting into real estate, what is the first lesson or what's the first thing you recommend everybody do?
Man, so the most important thing that I have everybody do right at the beginning of their journey in White Feather, which you don't need to be a part of White Feather to do, is you have to really nail down what is the reason that you want to do this. Like another thing, like the most famous sort of thing is your why, right? Simon Sinek, start with why. Like everybody talks about your why, and that is the case, right? It's like find out what it is that's ultimately the emotional driver for doing this. And the reason for that is because you need to keep that front and center. Because when you get punched in the face, you for sure will get punched in the face. And when you do get punched in the face, you have to, your why is what ultimately is going to keep you driving forward. So if that's your, if you, I got talked to a guy yesterday who has twin girls. They're 9 months old. And he said, I realized 9 months ago when we had those girls that I needed, like the rest of my life is going to be about providing for them. They are my absolute world. And other people, they may think differently. Other people may think it's, oh well, this, it's my dad. I want to help my dad out because he's another guy. His dad's struggling with cancer, and so he wants to help his dad out. Another is he grew up in a really rough neighborhood, and he wants to bring education and opportunities back to the people from his barrio. And so like there's other people. It's like they never traveled outside the country, and so they want to experience the rest of the world. It doesn't matter what it is for you because it's going to be different for every person. But you need to really search inside and ask yourself, why am I wanting to do this? And you need to do that 5 times. Okay. So, for instance, somebody comes to me and says, hey, buddy, I want to learn how to build financial freedom. And I say, okay, why? And they say, well, because I want to be able to, I want to be able to make $10,000 a month. Okay, awesome. Why? Why are you wanting to make $10,000 a month? Oh, well, because then that'll allow me to work part time at my job. Okay, awesome. That's great. Why do you want to work part time at your job? Well, because I want to be able to free up time to go to, to see my daughter's, recitals because I've never been able to see them before. That's awesome, right? That's now you're starting to get to something that's a deep emotional thing. Why is it important to you to go to your daughter's recitals? Because my dad never went to mine, right? Now we're talking. Now we're talking about something that is deep seated in your childhood psyche that is a driver for what is making you want to do something. You want to be a better father than your father was, right? In his particular example, he wants to be a better father than his father was. That is something that's at the core of his identity. And right now, he's not able to be what he deems a good father because he can't get off work. He's missing all of these things because he's working, and he wants to be able to have financial freedom so that he can be what he identifies as a great father. That's something where whenever he buys that Sun Valley house and it flips upside down and he's like, oh my God, I've lost all this money. You go back to him and say, you can't stop. You have to keep investing in this town that's 50% off now. Because if you don't, you'll never be able to be the kind of father you want to be. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So for
Absolutely.
everybody out there who's wanting to do something like build financial freedom, it's tough, right? It's a tough road and it takes a while, but my God, is it worth it? I can tell you this though, there's no way you're going to be able to handle all of the ups and downs and the punches in the face unless you've got a solid why and you understand what that is and you think about it. So start with your why is what I would say. I just rip Simon Sinek off completely.
No, that's awesome. In fact, I've been. It kind of goes back to something that I have. I probably stole it from somewhere myself. Everybody reacts to pain. We will do anything to avoid pain in any way, shape, or form. And until you establish a strong enough why, that's the only other thing that could push you.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's great to hear that. We're kind of quickly running out of time here, but I would be curious, buddy, why the name White Feather?
It was a dual effort. So my wife and I were driving down a road one time, and we were trying to think about, this was 15 years ago. We were trying to think about the name of the company. We knew we wanted to buy real estate and to build a company, and we wanted to call it something. And we passed a road called White Feather Road, And my wife was like, "Oh my God, that is a great, cool name. I can just imagine it in my mind, this beautiful feather and all this sweet imagery, and it's very angelic." And I was like, "You know what else? White Feather is the nickname of Carlos Hathcock, who was the deadliest sniper in Marine history. He used to wear a white feather in his boonie cover during Vietnam whenever he would stalk the Viet Cong in order to literally, he was so crazy, he would taunt them with the anti-camouflage, basically, a white feather. And so he actually is his nickname in Vietnamese was Long Draw, which means white feather. And so I was like, that is a badass name. That's super cool. And all the Marines I know are going to really, every Marine knows that story. So
Mm,
all the Marines I know are going to be like, yeah, that's awesome. And so my wife got her sweet angelic imagery, and I got the Carlos Hathcock tie-in.
no, that's awesome. Well, you know, we've been talking about financial freedom here and quite a bit of mindset here, buddy. But I want you to take just a moment. As everybody's noticing, you're sitting in your car right now doing this interview.
Yep.
Why are you sitting in your car?
Yeah, I got kicked out of my house. I used my VA loan several years ago to buy this old dilapidated house. I guess I just never got over buying the old dilapidated houses. Spent like 4 years renovating it. I mean, inside out, everything. And it's in Southern California. It's in a place called Carlsbad. And then last year we had this idea. Well, why don't we rent it out on Airbnb and use that money to pay for a vacation? Now that I'm out of the Marine Corps, I can work from anywhere. And so we did it last year. We went through Guatemala and Belize and Costa Rica for 3 months while we rented it out, and it paid for everything. And then this year we were like, well, the city didn't really like us doing the short-term rental thing. They kind of were like, we'd rather you not do that. And so we were like, well, what can we do, right? And so what we did was we put it up, but as a medium-term rental, right? So 30 days or more. And we got somebody who offered us $17,000 a month to rent our house for 3 months. So we were like, well, that's way, way, way more than we pay in mortgage. And so, yeah, sure, we'll do it. So we had to move out. I moved out about 5 days ago, and we're staying in an RV at a campground. And this is now my mobile office because it actually, so we're going to use that money to travel through Montenegro and the Bahamas and Puerto Rico and everything. If anybody does reach out to me on social media, you'll see it. We're going to post this whole story because that's the whole point, right? The whole point of everything that we're doing is we're helping our members build financial freedom so they can live, they can live their life by their design. And when I was in the Marine Corps, especially, or if I had a 9 to 5 job, there's no way that I would be able to do this. How could I possibly? Right? You get 2 weeks of vacation a year. And so, but the fact of the matter is that in today's world, you have the ability to create whatever kind of life you want. And I've never been a fan of teachers or mentors or gurus who will teach me something, but they don't live it themselves. And so, what we're doing right now, specifically, literally right now, is practicing what we preach.
You know, one of the things that's really strikes me, buddy, is the level of optimism and mindset you have going on. Is there anything that you have? Oh, there goes my Apple thing with the it does this, pops that up every once in a while. Is there any strategies or tactics that you do to maintain the level of mindset that you obviously have?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, well, one of the things that I do, so your mindset will literally be whatever you fill it, right? Your mind is a neural net, and it's a fertile ground that it'll reflect whatever it is you feed it. And so what I do is I don't ever listen to the news ever. I don't watch the news. I don't listen to it. I will read selected news about, like, I have the Google newscasting, and I will literally like thumbs down any type of political or negative news. This person gets shot, this person, school shooting here, like, political divides, all this other stuff that's just negative and doesn't serve me at all. I don't pay attention to it. I don't listen to it. What I do is I listen to Exponential Wisdom, the podcast. I listen to Moonshots. I listen to podcasts about all of the amazing advancements in technology that are happening in the United States and around the world right now, and why it's the most exciting time in human history to be alive. I also surround myself and have conversations. I don't allow toxic negative people in my sphere. And I'm not talking about, like, talking about our problems. Talking about our problems is very normal, very healthy. There's nothing wrong. I'm talking about toxic negative people, if you know what I mean. people that
Hmm.
always have problems, people that find problems in everything. I don't I don't allow them in my sphere. I selectively surround myself with people that have an optimistic mindset, that have, that have a future they think is brighter than their past, right? They're the kind of people who lust for life. So I listen to things that shape that kind of mindset. I surround myself with the kind of people that shape that mindset. And then I do practice. I do think that gratitude is a phenomenal practice. And this is not new to me. Everybody teaches it. Tony Robbins and Zig Ziglar and, Napoleon Hill and, everybody forever talks about the power of gratitude. And what I do is I will look around at the things that I have, the things that everybody has, and I will force myself to be truly grateful for them. Right. So for instance, I have two working hands and arms. I don't have cerebral palsy. I don't have ALS. I don't have an amputation. Right. I
Hmm.
have the blessings and the benefit of having two working hands. Isn't that awesome? If I didn't, I couldn't drive this car. Right. My eyes work. I don't have 20/20 vision, but they work. Right. If I was blind, I wouldn't be able to look at you. I wouldn't be able to see a sunset. I wouldn't be able to see my daughter's eyes. I wouldn't be able to drive. How simple is it, right? So how bad a day can you actually have if you can see? Or even if you can't see and you're listening to this podcast, you can hear it. Imagine not being able to hear it. So we have so much to be grateful for. So much to be grateful for that has nothing to do with money. And if it's taken away, oh man, Brad Lee I think it was Brad Lee. I listened to a podcast that he was doing. It was very brief example. He goes, check this out. If I gave you $1 million right now, would you be happy? And they were like, yeah, we'd be overjoyed. Obviously, you give me $1 million, it's going to make my day. Is there anything that can happen by and large in that day? Someone be rude to you, cut you off in traffic, whatever. Is there anything by and large that could happen to you for the rest of the day that would take away that joy? Well, almost certainly no, because what do I care if somebody cuts me off in traffic if I got $1 million, right? That's
Hmm.
amazing. And he goes, okay, so $1 million is important to you. It's powerful. It makes you happy. What if I told you I would give you 10 times that amount? $10 million. The only catch is you can't wake up tomorrow morning, right? You got $10 million. You can do whatever you want to with it until tomorrow morning, and then you die. Would you take it? And they were like, no, of course not. Of course I wouldn't take. That's crazy. And he goes, okay. So you're saying that waking up tomorrow morning is worth more than $10 million to you. And you just said that $1 million makes you happy. So then why is waking up tomorrow morning not worth 10 times the happiness that you felt, right? Why is waking up not the greatest gift ever if you wouldn't take $10 million to not wake up tomorrow morning? It's a mindset shift, right? The ultimate gratitude is I'm alive. I'm here. I don't know what today brings. And so what I will tell you is that as humans, we're not hardwired to think that way naturally. You have to force it. So
Hmm.
the short answer to your question of how do I remain optimistic and how do I remain in a positive and productive mindset and all, it's all the things that I talked about. It's I listen to it all the time. I surround myself with people that are like that, and then I force myself to be grateful. And I get pissed off, I get down, I get depressed, I get everything like everybody else, but I don't allow myself to stay there because I don't believe that that's a way to live life.
That's really an important lesson. I think it's a really interesting tactic regarding like the news consumption, for example.
Yeah.
Because you're probably gonna. It almost start makes me sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I think a lot of the material that is pushed our way is just to distract us and to keep us in some other mindset. What you're doing locally, what you can do to your life, what you can do within your community is going to have a way bigger impact than us worrying about who could be the next president.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Think about how much time someone who is really consumed with politics, for instance, how much time they spend, you know, really, really concerning themselves with who the next president is. And then take a look at how much that president actually impacts your daily life. Actually does. I gotta be honest with you, Jack. I haven't thought about Biden at all in the last several years. I didn't think about Trump
You're
at all
lucky.
before that. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like because that's not the world. He doesn't affect my life. Neither did Trump. Neither did, I mean, in various ways, like 1031 exchange laws and the tax law and everything like that. But really, that affects my tax attorney's life, because then my tax attorney needs to still find ways that I can mitigate taxes. So I don't spend much time at all thinking about who's president or who's, especially in the Senate or your governor or anything. It's like, you're right. You can affect so much more in your community and in your daily life. If there's somebody that, like, if your next door neighbor is like throwing trash over your fence, that affects you. Deal with that. Handle that. That affects you, right?
Mhm.
But the things that don't affect you, not really. They may have a secondary effect, or they have the effect you allow them to have. I can tell you, when it comes to the news, to me, it's a very simple business model, right? They're for-profit engines, and so they know that bad news sells better than good. It sells better at a rate of 10x, and they're for-profit engines. I don't blame them. Right? They do what they do to make money, so they're trying to drive my eyes to their advertising, and if it bleeds, it leads. I get all that, but stories about bleeding don't help my life and don't help me build abundance in my family. So I don't listen to them, right? And I'm a Marine. I've seen plenty of bloodshed and death. It's not that don't think those things exist in the world. It's just, it doesn't serve to help me with my mission. So I don't
Mhm.
consume it, you know?
Yeah. No, I can't agree more. Earlier you talked about how you were a bit upside down on that one property, on
Mhm.
your first property, and then you, instead of panicking and selling it, you turned it into a rental. And between, well, now your future wife, you decided, well, let's double down and buy another one
Mhm.
since the place is on sale. It's just proof that more times than not, it's best to do almost the opposite of what the mass
Mhm.
is doing. The most of the population is eating bad food, watching
Mhm.
bad television,
Mhm.
consuming, like you said, it's
Mhm.
10x the amount of revenue for bad news.
Mhm.
They're not going to produce bad news unless there is the population that wants to consume that bad news.
100%. 100%. I think, you can get a pretty good litmus test on which direction you need to be pointing by looking at what the majority of average people are doing and do the opposite of that. And that's not a, I'm not a, you know by now, and if you talk to anybody who knows me, I'm not a, what do you call it? Whenever somebody is, oh, a cynic. I'm not a cynic. I'm not a cynical guy. I'm not a negative guy. But the reality is that most people make bad decisions when it comes to investing, when it comes to, to what they consume and all of that. And it just, yeah, you can get a pretty good idea of what to do by looking at what not to do, you know?
Well, buddy, this has been a fantastic conversation. You've brought so much value to the show. Before I let you go, I do have those list of rapid fire questions, but before we get into those, is there a question or concept you think we should have covered here today so far?
No, I think I like where this conversation went. It's always so different than you think it will be. This has been a unique conversation, I will tell you that. I've been on dozens and dozens of podcasts, and this one's felt unique to me, which is rare. So thank you for that.
Well, I hope that was in a good way.
In a good way, absolutely a good way. Yeah,
Well, if you're ready, we'll jump into the rapid fire questions. And
sure.
just to remind everybody, look for Buddy Rushing on all the socials. I'm going to have those as clickable links in the show notes. But first, here's the first question, buddy. What lie do real estate investors sometimes tell themselves and maybe to others?
Wow, that's a good question. What lie did they tell themselves? The lie that they tell themselves, and I believe that they believe it's true, unfortunately, but it's not necessarily true, is that, I can do all of the jobs. So I can run this business by myself. I.e., what they do is they're the accountant, they're the bookkeeper, they're the property manager, they're the analysis, they're the CEO, the CFO, they're all of the things. And the lie is, no one can do this better than me, or I can't trust anybody else to do this. And that is what cripples most people and turns them into the hardest working member of their business. instead of the business owner. And so the truth is, you absolutely can and should and need to outsource everything but what is directly in the center of your zone of genius.
Do you have a book recommendation, or what are you reading right now?
You know, I recently read the book Die with Zero, and I would absolutely recommend it. I won't spoil it, but effectively, it's about how to live the greatest life possible with the resources that you have, to the point where when you die, you leave nothing on the table. It's a phenomenal book.
If you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
That the three things that you need to have success are independent of money. You do not need money to build financial freedom yourself, right? Because I originally thought, oh, well, I'll just save and then invest, and then save and then invest. You don't need money to do that. What you need is three things. You need to have the knowledge. So you got to educate yourself, whether it's free knowledge, like I said, or paid knowledge, whatever. You need to have a network of people you can trust, because they will bring all of the resources. You need money. There's so much money out there. You do not need to have your own money to build financial freedom. You just need to have a network of people you trust that have the money, right? And have the knowledge and have the experience and have the deals and all of that stuff, have the expertise. And then most importantly of the three, you need to take action, right? Action, action, action. You show me somebody that takes consistent action, and I'll show you somebody that inevitably will have success. Even if they fail, they will inevitably eventually have success if they continue to act.
And then lastly, what single strategy, process, or tool have you implemented that has had the biggest time-saving impact to your business?
I mean, it's going to go back to the thing that I said from the beginning. So Dan Sullivan, who's the strategic coach, he owns Strategic Coach. He wrote a book that was quite popular back in the day called Who Not How. And basically what he's saying is, it isn't about a strategy, it isn't about a system or anything. All those things are great, but ultimately, in order to grow your impact, you need to find the person, right? And now it could potentially be a virtual person, as in AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can have an AI who as well. And that's going to become something you will see entire businesses, entire industries built with a single real human surrounded by AI collaborators, right? And I'm really excited about that future, because AI never sleeps. It doesn't get tired. It's not biased. Doesn't cost any money, right? It can work while I sleep. So anyway, I would say the biggest impact that saves time, that saves everything, is outsourcing the time-consuming things to somebody, and that somebody may be an artificial intelligence now.
Well, buddy, this has been a great conversation. Again, it is Buddy Rushing on all of the socials. I'm going to have those as clickable links in the show notes, but really appreciate your time, buddy. I hope you'll consider coming back again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.